Bobbito's book of B-Ball Bong Bong, a memoir of sports, style, and soul. The best book about the New York City playground since heaven is a playground.
Oh, wow.
And I mean that with all my heart, Bobbito. If folks don't know, Bobbito is also a legendary hip hop DJ. He's a Hall of Famer in that regard. People might know the Stretch and Bobbito show, and if you don't, then frankly, you probably don't know that much about hip hop. But that's okay. This is an open space. And also the man's game and sneaker world, announcing world. I mean, this is the basketball Swiss Army knife and the hip-hop Swiss Army knife and the person who showed us, other than Curtis Blow, how it all comes together. The one and only Bobbito Garcia. How you doing, sir?
What an intro. Thank you, man. I just, I'm like, whoa. First of all, amazing discussion that I jumped in on prior, and I appreciate you allowing me platform to join here, and props to everybody in here. I feel welcome. Thank you. And Dave, you have seen specifically the potential of my memoir since day one. So I want to say thank you to you, and thank you to Adam Mansbeck, who brought me to Akashic Books, Johnny Temple as well. So, props to everybody up in here. Yo, peace.
So we want to jump right in. I'm just going to ask the first to get it going. We want to talk about B-Ball, Bong Bong, and everything that you tease out of from the New York City streets. But I associate you so strongly with New York City. And the book, New York City, is like the main character, other than yourself in the book, is New York City. New York City is on the world's mind right now with the overwhelming nomination, now that we know the absentee or the weighted votes, the overwhelming nomination of Zohran Mamdani for the mayor. You got Trump saying he's going to try to maybe look into denaturalizing him and deporting him because of a hip hop lyric tying into you right here on that front as well. MC Cardamon, as he was known. But so Bobbito, what are you hearing on the streets there? Were people surprised Zohran won? Did you feel that energy? And do you have hope going forward?
I mean, I think I'm always going to have hope as depressing as current politics may be with the new administration and what's going on globally. But as far as Zoran, I think it's wonderful that he won the ballot in the primary. I think it's interesting, and I'm always curious about why socialists have to sort of undress themselves and revert to a Democratic ticket. I mean, Bernie Sanders in 2016 kind of did the same thing with his drive towards the presidency. Of course, it worked in his favor. He caught steam, but ultimately, like, are either of them really Democrats? I almost feel like the whole title becomes meaningless, whether you're a Democrat or Republican. In my estimation, in current politics, they sort of operate the same. And they have pretty much the same agenda, which is two different titles. Now, in the New York City case, we're very aware of the history of the success of Democrats, going for the mayoral title. So if that helps Zoran and his campaign, then sure, then just switch titles and call yourself a Democrat. But I would like to see the extension and the expansion of how the U.S. approaches politics with beyond a two-party system. I've voted for the Green Party. I've voted for working class families party members in various council and assembly and controller and all these other offices that are held. And I was even invited to be a contributor to a national campaign to increase registrations for voters for certain communities. I'm going to leave out the name of the organization. But when I started talking about the socialist, what's the two girls, Claudia and Karina, when I started
Yeah.
talking about them in the conversation, they never invited me back. I never got invited
All
back
right.
to be part of that
Mm,
because I was like, what are we doing to, like, if we're going to
mm,
increase voter registration, are we only trying to encourage people to vote Republican or Democrat, or are we trying to get people to vote and create another option
mm,
in this world as we move forward? Because clearly something is not working. And I hope that Zoran can work, and I believe that he can. I know that he's going to have huge capitalist interest working in opposition of what he can achieve. But at base, his platform seems super strong. He has my support, even though I don't live within the 5 boroughs and couldn't vote for him. But if I was, I would have. And it's, I've always, when I register, I've always kept my Democratic registry, so that I could hopefully affect those primaries. And then when I go to vote,
mm,
I don't vote within my party, right?
mhm. I know.
So
That makes perfect sense. I know we want to get to the book. I'm sure Chuck and Etan have questions, so I want to zip my mouth right now. I do have the follow up, but on this subject and on New York City hoops, I could ask a 60-minute question. So zip, Etan, you're up, my man.
Well, I mean, I could ask a follow up on that too, but I do want to get to the book because I'm a fellow Akashic Books author. Actually, my 2 books are right back there on
there
Akashic
you
Books.
go. Yeah. No, I mean,
Definitely.
props for that. I saw the Edge of Sports catalog, and I was like, oh, I'm going to be in good company.
No, for sure, for sure. So talk to everybody about Bong Bong. Talk about what that term means, and people who might not be aware of it. Just break everything down.
Yeah, well, I mean, the title of the book, Bobbito's Book of B-Ball Bong Bong, is playful, as is the cover photo, and that was highly curated in each case. Uh, it- in the realm of memoirs for basketball, it's usually like champion coaches, NBA legends, or athletes, and I noticed like the tone is usually really serious. And my approach towards basketball is I didn't play in the NBA. I'm not a champion. I'm not a legendary player. Like I have so much joy, and it provides me such a peaceful state of mind that I wanted to convey that in the title as well as the cover art. So, um, I love alliteration too, Eton. So, you know, I just was like Bobbito's Book of B-Ball Bong Bong. And it just, Bong Bong is one of the ways when I'm doing play by play that I express an action. Oh, we got the whip wop bong bong, and it's just something I came up with out of nowhere. You know, I mean, in hip hop, we were saying bong bong. And, if you're familiar with Jamaican music, Toots and the Maytals had bong bomb, BAM. The Sister Nancy had bomb bomb. I used to think that they were saying bong bong, bong bong, you know. So that's from my childhood, and then becoming like a DJ and a record collector. I was able to own those records eventually, and so yeah, I don't know really how I came up with the name. It was just
Mm,
playful and just in the moment, spontaneous, and now it's out there. And so Dave Zirin and our boy Johnny Temple at Akashic, they were both like, "Yo, Bob, like people are gonna look at the title on various platforms and not really know who you are or what this book is about. So why don't you add a subtitle?" And so I came up with a memoir of sports, style, and soul, because that really felt like it encapsulated what the book is about. Basketball is very meaningful in my life at every stage, still is, and will be. Um, the way that I was able to navigate those waters in New York growing up with hip hop and sneaker culture being sort of like intersected into how I played the game. Style became a very big important element of that as well. And then the last piece of the subtitle is soul, which to me is it's beyond an activity. It's it's my meditation. It's how I'm present. It's how I feel the most like myself. we are living in the midst of a pandemic, an ongoing pandemic, even if the government says it's ended. It's the numbers and the science and the illness still. We are in a global pandemic, and I find myself in the midst of all that, and seeing what's going on in Palestine, and seeing the ongoing struggle of Puerto Rico fighting for its independence. Our people in Hawaii trying to gain some semblance of autonomy again, and self determination. And I mean, on and on. We see what's going on in Sudan and the Congo and Haiti, and on and on and on, right? And so I consume all this, and then where do I find my outlet to forget about it all for like an hour? It's the park.
Mm.
It's putting up jump shots for an hour, 45 minutes. And, I'm not even getting into my personal struggles with my family and everything else. It's like, that's where I find my peace. And so it was very important to me. Again, alliteration, sports, style, soul. Yes, that made sense to me. But it's really, I think what people can get out of my book is that it's not just a sport for me. It's not even close.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well,
It's not a pastime. It's not a casual thing. Like this is my life.
yeah. And when you say this is my life, I feel like you are talking, sure, you're talking about hoops and hoops culture, and everything that surrounds it, but running through it is New York City hoops as something that is particularly dear to you and that you particularly adhere to. If you were talking to somebody from across the country or around the world about what has made New York City hoops distinct and trailblazing, what would you point to?
I will point to my book.
Ah,
Literally, like read the 216 pages and the 30 years of my 35 millimeter photography that's featured in on the pages
great.
and the spreads, and because I'm not trying to be self-aggrandizing here,
Mhm.
but I don't know another book that captures the essence of the city game the way mine does. Now, Rizzoli released a book called City Game, right, which was phenomenal, and I contributed to. I licensed my photos. I wrote a piece for it. It was edited by William Roden.
Yours is better.
Uh, I mean, it's beautifully designed. It's incredible. There's the City Game by Pete Axlum in 1970, which speaks to that era. Incredibly done. Rick Tellender, Heaven is a Playground. The In Your Face basketball book by Alex Wolff in 1980. I mean, there's literature out there that really like captures the moment in each case. What my book does is really different is that, and this is not a knock because Rick Tellender and Alex Wolff are both dear friends of mine. And, you know, I am inspired by them. But neither of them are from New York, right? I'm embedded in the community, born and raised, and I can speak on New York from an insider's view. That's also, I'm a Latino. I'm raised on hip hop, and so how do those two identifiers inform my experiences on the court, which is very different than someone coming from outside and being like, wow, this is really incredible. I'm going to report on this, or I'm going to document it. And then I'm also a ball player. I'm not just a journalist. I'm not just a documentarian. Like, I'm a respected ball player and I'm an announcer. So I have all these different roles. And there's all this unique social phenomena that happens in New York where these crossroads sort of intersect. And I'm able to express all of that in my book in a way that, in a language that a New York Times reader could appreciate, but at the same time, someone who hasn't even graduated from high school and might have a reading level of just whatever can still extract the passion that jumps out of the page, and they can identify with it. So I'm very proud of the project. Extremely proud of the project. I've done a lot of intellectual property in my life. I've directed 3 films, wrote 3 books, just on and on. But this is particular in my legacy.
Chuck, won't you jump in
I
there?
can't wait. Go ahead, Tom.
No, I want you to jump in there. Jump in
I
there.
can't wait to read the book. I'm really can't because I'm a diehard Knicks fan.
Yeah.
So I know you got Stephon Marbury in there. I didn't get all the point guards that came out at New York City. There's a whole list of them: Kenny Anderson, Kenny Smith, Mark Jackson. We could go Ryan Strickland. We could go on. But I wanted to ask you about my favorite Nick when I was a child coming up. That I will almost fight people almost to the death to tell him how good he was, and that is Bernard King, and then of course his brother from Fort Greene, Brooklyn.
Hmm.
People don't know. History has not been kind to how good a scorer, how unstoppable a scorer he was. Could you talk a little about Bernard? You could throw an Albert there because they say he was better on the streets. About them coming up in Fort Greene.
Yeah. Well, you have two of the greatest players in New York's history right there. I mean, Albert was LeBron James for the 70s, like bar none. I mean, he was the most highly recruited player out of New York for the decade and perhaps maybe in the country. I mean, his pro career didn't pan out in the way that people anticipated. Bernard King, not as highly touted out of high school, but All American, plays at Tennessee and college alongside Ernie Grunfeld, who also winds up in the NBA from Queens. And then he puts the NBA on smash mode. But my book is not about that. As much as I love Bernard King, and I used to be a halftime reporter for the New York Knicks.
I remember.
Yeah, I've done events with Bernard King, lovely dude, and he deserves all the accolades. But my book is not really about the NBA. It really centers on the asphalt. It doesn't negate what the Knicks mean to the city, because in the first paragraph, I open up the entire memoir about my father's sensational love for the franchise and how it kind of dismisses my ability to watch Happy Days and Welcome Back Kotter in the early 70s because I'm just a 7-year-old kid, but the Knicks are on. So the book opens up with that. But my journey is really about, going from park to park, playing pickup, playing tournaments, announcing who did I see when my fingers on the chain link fence. And I mentioned a lot of guards that don't make the NBA, who maybe people might know or might not. And I think going back to Dave Zirin's point, that's why my book might be so essential in that I don't know another book out there that it's not just a list. It's like I tell you about Gorky Ortiz, his importance, why he is part of the fabric that winds up elevating the creativity and that we see on national TV. There's this whole underbelly, this undercurrent that's New York and the five boroughs, and it's very particular. It's very specific. And so, yeah, I mean, I tell people all the time, I'm not a spectator. I'm a ball player first and foremost. If I have 45 minutes of free time in between being a caregiver and a caretaker and, a freelancer and an entrepreneur and trying to figure out what I'm going to do in the next 2-3 years to pay bills, right? I'm going to go play ball. I'm not going to sit on the couch and watch TV. There's nothing wrong with that. And I love the NBA and what the Knicks do to help motivate people to go play. Because I say it all the time. Like the Knicks made the Eastern Conference Finals. There's more people playing in the parks this summer than last summer, automatically, just by virtue of the Knicks' success. And that's globally, that's just not in the city. If you remember Linsanity, 2012, like, this city was on fire. And I just happened to be on behind the camera that summer making my film, doing it in the park, Pick Up Basketball NYC, or was it 2011? I don't remember the year the year that Linsanity happened. It was either 2011, 2012, and Kevin Durant. They had the lockout. Kevin Durant came up to 55th. They played at EBC at Rucker Park. I mean, this city was on fire. So the NBA affects how much people are going to be inspired to go to extra and play. And people going to play regardless.
For
But
sure. For sure.
the NBA is a great marketing vehicle for participation. And
For sure.
let's note that basketball is the number one participatory sport in the world right now.
Mm.
Now I don't know how legitimate those sources are that determine that. I'm like, how do you figure that out? Like, how do you come up with these numbers? But I mean, listen, I've been to Senegal, I've been to Zimbabwe, I've been to South Africa, I've been to New Zealand, I've been to 47, 48 countries in the world, 6 continents. And I've seen it with my own eyes, how people are playing ball, how they're approaching the game, the fever that's out there. And so I believe it. And the crazy thing is we have not met our potential. Basketball still has so much space to grow. It's an incredible game to be a part of.
100%. So let me ask you. Let me jump in here. My grandfather would always tell me stories about the playground legends, and he always talked about Pearl Washington. He'd always talk about boys and girls high school, and then he would clarify it was boys high school once, and I guess it was. I always got lost in that because he'd always. I guess they changed it to boys and girls, or they changed. Whatever.
They made it co-ed.
Right. So talk to me about Pearl Washington a little bit, and like what he meant to really the playgrounds, and just some of those playgrounds legends. He would talk to me about Earl Manigault. You know what I mean? I grew up with all these different stories, but talk to me a little bit about those playground legends.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Pearl Washington, aka Pac-Man, that's what he was called in the hood. He got known as Pearl Washington, in media, and eventually when he was at Syracuse, he was
just Pearl.
He was. I'm saying he was like Elvis Presley at Syracuse.
Oh yeah.
This dude was like larger than life.
Yeah.
I shouldn't say Elvis Presley. He was Jay-Z to Syracuse. But I had the good fortune of being in New York when he was in high school and playing. He was playing in Harlem at Kingdom, and he was playing in the Bronx at the Tiny Archibald tournament and in the projects. I mean, Pearl was everywhere. Pearl was like omnipresent because even if he didn't show up, people were talking about him. People were like, and the beautiful thing was that there was no footage, right? So it's all folklore, but it could be backed up. Because he wanted to become All-American. He wanted to, at Syracuse, is like everything that people were talking about. Like, yo, this dude Pearl just dropped 50. Yo, this dude Pearl did it in and out and made somebody fall. Yo, this Pearl showed up on a motorcycle at halftime and still dropped 40. Like, all these stories like resonate, right? And Dwayne Washington, may rest in peace. I mean, he did make it to the NBA, and he didn't wind up the player that everybody hoped that he would be. But his impact still, I mean, if you look at the Showtime film, Point Guards of New York, I'm sorry, NYC Point Guards is the name of the film. And I'm heavily featured in it as a historian. I mean, Pearl inspired Kenny Anderson. Pearl inspired Kenny Smith. Pearl inspired Mark Jackson. Pearl inspired Shamgar. Like Pearl inspired Rayful Alston. Like, you talk about any point guard that comes out of New York for the next 15 plus years, it's like the bedrock is Pearl Washington. So his game was nuts. And let's note, as a ball player, Etan, that he was given license that was kind of unprecedented, right? If we think about college basketball in the late 70s and 80s, the point guard is passing half court and dumping it into the post or starting to play and then basically being removed, right? Like, you be ready to get back on defense. You're like our free safety, right? And Pearl wasn't that. Pearl was like the first option on offense as a point guard. A lot of people think about Allen Iverson being that sort of archetype that sort of changes the role of that position, but Pearl is like 15 years before that.
Yeah.
And we could see highlights of him at Syracuse where he's just going ISO.
I love your use of the word folklore there, because I really do think that's something like my kids are missing when it comes to sports, because we can see everything on YouTube. We're ranking kids before they're 10 years old. Everybody's got their huddle website up. And what we lose is the sort of like, hey, there's this guy named Bo Jackson who he's in high school. He can hit a ball 500 yards and he just ran for 600 yards in a game. And you hear these Paul Bunyan type stories, which for me growing up is just part of what made sports just so much fun, because you hear and then you see it. And, that's really part of the joy. So I'm sorry that I feel like we've lost that. And your book restored it to me, like that feeling of wonder, because your tales are about people we may not have even have heard of. And they have that quality to them of both fact and legend that informs the game we love today. And frankly, is a bit of a reminder that the game used to be much more individualized, much more free flowing, much more like jazz, much more organic. And I don't know if you agree, but I certainly think that while there's a lot about the modern NBA that I love, there are aspects of that soul that have been sanded down.
Yeah, I mean, going back to Chuck's point earlier, I think while I was a halftime reporter for the Knicks, and then I was on ESPN doing the high school American games, the Elite 24, and I was meeting a lot of high profile players, and not really being wowed by them in terms of their demeanor or their disposition, and it's like, let's say if I was a tried and true spectator, like, why would I want to spectate people that I don't sense their integrity or their love for the game? Like, a lot of them were just going through the motions, or just not people who I would want to hang out with. And that's no judgment on them. But it's just like, if it's a job for you, then cool. I'd rather watch some 10, 11-year-olds in the projects dribble the ball off their feet, but they're having joy. And I get that, like, it's a business, it's professional sports. There's a lot of pressure. There's media, there's corporate interests, and and you're being asked to do like 80,000 things. So I don't pay any judgment. I don't pass any judgment, but I'm just like, why watch the NBA game with these dudes complaining when, I don't know, I don't see. I mean, of course, there's players that express that joy and that love, but going back to your point, Dave, I think there's just as we look at social phenomena as multiple variables involved, like, I think when it comes to the documentation, the over documentation of sports in our era, there's some great things about that. For example, Pee Wee Kirkland showed up to Mount Morris Park in Harlem back in the 60s. He was challenged to a one-on-one game, and he showed up with a briefcase with $10,000 in cash, and just popped it on the sideline and opened it up. This is coming from Pee Wee Kirkland. He told me the story. And he was like, "Put your money up. Let's play one-on-one." Right. So that was an era where, dudes would like hustle and, talk smack and get over on people. But now we have this whole 1v1 phenomena. You got YouTubers, they got like 500,000 followers, 300,000 followers. They're going park to park, they're crashing, they're playing one-on-one, and then they're getting ad revenue from their posts, and they're able to literally like support their family off of playing one-on-one basketball around the world. This is outside of the framework of the NBA, outside of the framework of the NCAA, outside of the framework of AAU. It's its own vehicle. And so to that, I think that's wonderful.
I think it's dope.
Yeah, right. Like, I advocate for that, particularly because they're playing outdoors, and I'm an evangelist for people playing on the asphalt. So, so the over documentation in that case worked out in our sport's favor. And there's people they got some of these views have like up to 1 million, 2 million views of like just a 1v1 game by two nobodies. They were like completely not known on anybody's radar, no top 100 camp, nothing. And they're getting like all these followers and excitement about it. And those people are watching it. And the same way I was telling you about the NBA, they're getting excited and being inspired to, I'm going to go out there and work on my game so I could be a great 1v1 player too.
Mm-hmm.
So
you're right. You're right.
Yeah.
There's a lot of giveth and taketh away with technology, no doubt.
Yeah.
Any last questions from folks? We've taken a lot of Bob's time, and the book is just came out, so I'm sure he's got stuff on the agenda, like going to bookstores and making sure they're by the cash register.
Yeah, I mean, listen,
I'll be doing later today as well.
Talking to the three of you is a joy, and I could, I've been doing a lot of press, for this campaign leading up to the publication date, which was yesterday, July 1st. But I mean, I'm talking to three intellectuals, and your first question wasn't even about basketball, right? And so I can talk in a way that I might not talk to other hosts, So if you want to keep on talking to me, if you want to keep on talking to me, I don't have any. I don't have an out right now. I'm enjoying this.
Good.
I have a follow up to your last comment, because you were talking about the one-on-ones, but when we talk about the legend that we remember, we're going back some time, and I'm wondering how much does the AAU, a lot of those great players today, they might have been funneled early onto the AAU scene, and we wouldn't have them on the street. So, or at the Rucker, how has the street ball game changed or been impacted by that movement, and what does it look like today?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think if we zoom out, right, if we think about, Etan had mentioned that he heard about Earl Manigault, right? Someone who unfortunately was an underachiever, right? Got caught up in drugs, became a heroin addict. To support his habit, he turned to crime, winds up in jail, right? If we look at Fly Williams, led the country in scoring at Austin Peay in Tennessee, Division I, winds up in the ABA with the St. Louis Spirits, but he winds up turning to a life of crime as well, and gets sucked into it and never really realizes his potential as well. He's one of the subjects in the book Heaven is a Playground by Rick Tellender. And this Pee Wee Kirkland, another example. Ray Lewis in Los Angeles. I mean, we can go on about these legends from the 60s and 70s. Billy Harris in Chicago, who, in the folklore realm are like larger than life. Now, if we move forward to the 90s and the last 25 years of AAU basketball, like these squads, for better or worse, are recognizing incredible talent, and they're taking them out of the hood every weekend and going to the Peach, the EYBL in Georgia, or they're going to this, tournament, and every weekend those kids are out, and they have a lot of guidance, and we're not losing. Who's the last player that we've lost to the street? If we think about Benji Wilson in 1984, gets shot. He's the number one prospect in the country, gets murdered in cold blood, unfortunately in Chicago. I mean, who's the last player that was supposed to make it that didn't? I don't know what the answer is. I mean, Chris Herron, made it to the NBA, played with Boston Celtics. He was doing hard drugs. He had his quandaries,
Great point.
But for the most part, in the last 25 years, like the people who were supposed to make it.
Right.
So as much as I might criticize AAU for taking those players out of the asphalt, and maybe the level of, there's been a lot of literature about how, the playground is dying and pickup basketball is dying. It's complete nonsense. It's written by writers who are not from these communities, right? They're like from the outside looking in. Or New York is no longer the mecca of basketball. It's like, just stop, So maybe the elite players aren't in the playground, but that doesn't mean that it's the number one participatory sport. There's masses and masses and masses of people playing ball outdoors now more than ever. Literally. And I documented that. I was in 180 parks in 75 days while the making of my first film, doing it in the park, Pick Up Basketball NYC. I can tell you hands-on, There's a lot of people out there playing ball. It's
Yeah.
not the 6'8" kid that's, being groomed to play at Kentucky,
Mm-hmm.
but that doesn't. So what?
Yeah.
So what? Basketball doesn't exist strictly for NBA. Basketball is a sport that Dr. James Naismith invented at December 21st, 1891, to be played.
Right.
So we are fulfilling his vision by creating platforms for people to participate.
So I got a question. We're gonna let you go. We're not gonna hold you too long, but I got you here. But I want to ask this question. So, you're the author of Where'd You Get Those? And it was great in Slam Magazine and New York and NYC Sneaker Collection Culture. When Dave had his Louder Than a Bomb, that Slam is a little different now. I wanted you to talk about the difference. When you were with them, you really talked about the culture, and you kind of brought. It was like almost like an extension of taking everybody inside, so they can see what the actual sneaker culture is in the city and what is going on and everything like that. I'm not gonna say it moved away from it, but it's just a little bit different. So I'm just asking you, what do you think it's different? I know things change, but
I think, just as we were talking about shifts in movement, in the sneaker world, there's been a great shift, right? In the last however many years, where the reselling aspect of it has really become prominent. I never entered that world for commerce. I never cared about it. Tell people all the time, like when I was on the radio with Stretch in the 90s, we didn't care if an artist was platinum or unsigned. That wasn't our determination. Is the person talented? Oh, word. Okay. She, they can rhyme. Let's have them up on a show. So similarly, like when it comes to the sneaker world, the documentation is oversaturated. The releases are oversaturated. The reselling is oversaturated. We have come to a space that was inevitable. Same thing happened with rap music. Same thing happens with anything that bubbles in the hood, that's powerful and passionate. And, it's just kind of like it crosses that level of counterculture. Like I got into sneakers because I was a ball player.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted functional kicks that would help me be the best player I could possibly be because I'm on the asphalt, right? That was my goal, right? And then I started customizing my sneakers in the late 70s, early 80s because I wanted to be unique. I wanted to match my sneakers to my uniform, to my Holcomb Rucker Youth Memorial T-shirt. So these are my that's my curiosity, and that's my my drive. A 12-year-old kid now might get into sneakers because he knows he can wait online, he can flip them for double the amount. In any business relationship, if you can buy something at wholesale and sell it for 100% or 200% markup, you're a great businessman. And 11-year-olds and 12-year-olds and 13-year-olds are figuring that out. Yeah. And I'm not mad at that. Although I think, for me, I'm more curious about the design of the sneaker. How does it help my lateral movement? Was the art that was put on top, the colors, the fabrics? Those are the things that I care about. The design aspect of it, the art, and certainly the silhouettes and the models have been taken out of the space for performance and been raised to the level of art. There's people who buy sneakers that don't even wear them. They just put them in their closet or put them on their shelves and take photos of them. And that's not my era. My era, we had to wear the sneakers to get props for them. And so, yeah, there has been a shift, a total shift. I haven't gone along with that shift. It's just, but I don't pass any judgment for people who are deep into that world and have fun doing that. Cool. That's you.
Well, Bob, you've been so generous with your time.
Okay.
Thank you so much, man.
No doubt. No doubt.
You're the best. The book, and I really can't say this loudly enough. Let me say the title. The book is called Bobbito's Book of B-Ball Bong Bong, a memoir of sports, style, and soul. I said before it was my favorite book about New York City hoops since Rick Talander's Heaven is a Playground. I think I might need to qualify that a little bit. This is one of my favorite books on hoops, period. I'm going to put it in the category of stuff like the Halberstam book about the Blazers is one of my all-time faves. Season on the Brink is one of my all-time faves. Soul in the Hole is one of my all-time faves. And Bobbito Garcia's B-Ball Bong Bong is now in the breath with those titles for me.
Thank you. I appreciate the love. And to all of you, have a blessed day. And thank you for your time. All right. That'll be cool.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Bob, for joining us, man. Well, all right. That was been an amazing show. We talked our talk. We talked to the great Bobbito Garcia. Any last comments? It's last word time on the show. Chuck Modiano, tell me something about the world of sports and or politics that I do not know.
I'm still stuck on Bobbito. I mean, I just really, it hit me different when I asked the question about what happens in the AAU, and he flipped it in a way I hadn't thought about. When was the last time you saw somebody who was going to be number one and they flamed out? So if the AAU is helping young people realize their potential where they wouldn't before, that's something really to consider that I hadn't thought about. So he flipped it on me, and I just really appreciated that.
Extremely important, though, to consider the caveat that AAU pipeline costs money. So a lot of that great talent on the blacktop maybe can't get into those funnels, and those funnels may have kids who have a more supportive base, home, society, life that prevents them from falling off the track. Just another thought. Etan, you, sir.
Yeah, to be honest, I was in the AAU world for a while with my son Malcolm when I was coaching his team, and unfortunately, there are a lot of stories of guys that didn't make it. PG County is a really basketball hotbed, and there are a lot of guys, even in the few years that I was coaching Malcolm's team, that we saw that just kind of fell by the wayside, made wrong decisions that should have been going to college to play here. And, unfortunately, it is still going on. And then when I go back home to Tulsa, Oklahoma, talking to everybody on the grounds and, what's going on and, between, Booker T and McLean and Central and all around North Tulsa, there's still, unfortunately, issues that swallow a lot of would-be talent and steer them in the wrong way. And a lot of times it's a reflection of the politics of the city. You have one thing that's happening in Tulsa is they closed down a lot of the parks and recreation places where guys would go and play ball. Different funding that happens where they shut down an entire school and then they try to disperse everybody out. And then they go into other school districts that don't want them there, and they force them to over penalize, criminalize everything, and then that affects the dropout rate. And then there's politics involved to why things are the way that they are. And then what we just saw with the budget cuts, it's all done for a reason. It's all done by design. The thing that makes it so heartbreaking is that a lot of the people who are supporting Trump don't understand that it's going to affect them as well. It's not just those people that it's affecting. It's going to be brought home, and that's the part that there's going to be a large awakening as people's Medicare gets cut, as these different social programs that people are grown accustomed to that don't for some reason feel that they are part of the group that is benefiting from these social programs because they have a different name. So they change the name. They don't call it, Medicaid, but they call it something else. But I know I'm going long, but there's a lot going on around the world, but it all intertwines. So when he said that, I was like, yeah, but unfortunately, politics is, involved in it, and it affects a lot of young people's lives. So
It does govern that space for sure.
definitely.
Well, we could talk all day, fellas. This has been a fantastic show. Thank you, Etan Thomas. Thank you, Chuck Modiano. Everybody out there, please stay frosty. Hear those sirens. They're coming for us. I'm Dave Zirin. We are out of here. Peace.